All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the actual advances in science that were made in this period. And in the very beginning of it, we're going to find out that in 1543, a Polish astronomer by the name of Nicholas Copernicus had been doing research on the universe, had been doing research on the solar system, had been doing research on the stars. And he was afraid. He had come up with a model of the solar system, the universe as he saw it, that was different than Ptolemy's. That was 1,500-year-old Ptolemy model, the Earth-centered universe. Copernicus says, no, no, no. The Earth is not the center of the universe. It's the sun. But he's so afraid. So he does all the research. He studies the stars. He plots it. And he says, look, I figured it out. It's not the Earth. The Earth goes around the sun, in fact. But he's so afraid to admit this because of what the Catholic Church might say. Remember, the church believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, and if you went against it, they might just excommunicate you, or even worse, that he waits till he's on his deathbed. And right when he's about to die, he releases this book that explained, and I'm going to show you a picture here, that in his opinion, the earth was the sun was the center of the earth, not the earth. I'm sorry, the sun was the center of the universe, not the earth. And if you look here, you can see this in Latin, okay? So Sol, sun, and then Mercury, Venus, here's earth. And you can see he put a moon there. He didn't forget about the moon. And then there's Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And then I think that he actually calls that the heavens, the area behind that. So he doesn't know about some of the other planets that are further out there, Uranus, Neptune. I don't know. Is Pluto a planet? But anyways, Copernicus comes out with this book, and quickly thereafter, a German mathematician by the name of Johannes Kepler takes the next step, and he writes in his studies. He says, "Yeah, you know what? Copernicus is right, but only part right, because the orbits around the Earth, they're not perfect circles like Copernicus had drawn in his drawings, but he says they're more of ovals. They're more ovals. Okay, so now we have Kepler who comes out and adds to Copernicus's theory, but he says not perfect circles, instead ovals. All the while this is going on, and keep in mind that the scientists of the period had read Copernicus's theory, and it causes them to rethink things. It causes them to study even further. And there was an Italian astronomer by the name of Galileo Galilei. Okay, and Galileo is very curious about this theory, and he does some research, and he says, I got to see things a little better. So he invents the world's first telescope. Okay, he also ends up, he makes detailed observations. He studies the stars. He's the first person to see the craters of the mountains on the moon. He's the first person to see and note and write about Jupiter having moons. It wasn't just Earth that had moons. He even is able to discover sunspots, which I don't know how you do that without staring at the sun. Don't stare at the sun. Um, but anyways, so now Galileo, right? He sees it also, and actually there's records that he and Kepler were writing back and forth, and they were both agreeing with Copernicus, but they're saying like, what do we do now? I mean, are you going to tell him? Are you going to write the book? No, no, no. Are you going to write the book? They're both kind of like afraid of what's going to happen if they wrote a book, and they showed the proof that they had, because of course this was challenging the church, and both of these people were afraid of the church coming down on them. Well, um, Galileo goes first, and Galileo writes a book called The Starry Messenger, and he lays out in there his discoveries, um, and the church calls him to Rome. He's an Italian guy, right? So he's right there in Italy anyways. And the church, when he gets to Rome, right, they force him under threat of death to take it back. Say, take it back. And if you don't take it back, we're going to kill you. Right here and right now, Galileo, you'll be dead. And he does. I would have too. He says, you know what? I was wrong. I believe this. He says, I did not. The earth does not go around the sun. In fact, the sun goes around the earth. The earth's the center of the universe. But as he's leaving, he kind of drops a hint. He goes, but earth moves. And he ends up being in house arrest for the rest of his life. Um, in an estate in Italy, the guy's not living hard, but I mean, look, um, we've all been asked to stay home a little more than normal during this coronavirus moment, and it's no fun. But we all get to still go out. But imagine, I mean, no matter how nice your house is, if you're stuck there forever, I mean, that's no good, right? Um, but now it's out there, okay, and there's no turning back at this point. Scientists discover and study Galileo's work. They use his telescopes, um, and um, the, this Earth-centered solar system is dead in scientific opinion. Now, the church is going to disagree for a bit longer, but eventually even the church is going to accept it. The advanced, the knowledgeable princes and kings of this period were hiring great minds to come and study this in their observatories that they were building. Like, this became a thing, and all of a sudden there become scientific communities and clubs where they're studying these ideas of Copernicus, of Kepler, of Galileo, and in one of these scientific communities, a guy named Sir Isaac Newton starts to come out, and not only so he takes it one step further. So Sir Isaac Newton is a professor at Cambridge University in England. He writes many books about the laws of nature. There's an old story that's not true. Why am I telling it to you? What's the whole point of me telling you this? That one day Sir Isaac Newton is sitting under an apple tree, and an apple falls and hits him on the head, and he says, "What made that apple fall and hit me in the head?" And then he surmised that he came to the conclusion that the same thing that pulled the apple down from that tree, instead of letting the apple just kind of float there after it had broken from the tree, is the same thing that is holding him onto Earth. Now, again, this probably didn't happen, um, but it's true that he's the guy who starts to write about gravity, and gravity is so much bigger than just that, right? Like, yeah, I've been to the observatory, in Griffith Park, and I know that I weigh different weights on different planets because different planets have different gravities. I've seen the videos of the astronauts and the way they jump on the moon and they're kind of floating. Yeah, that's cool, right? Gravity holds you down, but it's more because gravity also explains how the planets are held in orbit around the sun, and how the moon are held in orbit around planets, and then how other solar systems, and his theory of gravity goes way deeper than just like your basic gravity, okay? And he really gets into the explanation of how the entire universe is held together by gravity. Um, so all of a sudden, here we are. We're 100 years later after Copernicus, and not only do we realize that yes, the sun is the center of the universe, but scientists, but great thinkers now know that the moons are attached to planets because of gravity, that the planets are connected to the sun because of gravity, and that there's more out there, and that gravity is a factor in how everything that exists is in its place. Um, but it's not just astronomy that makes gains. In medicine, we're going to see around the exact same time that there are other great thinkers in Europe who are making huge advances in medicine. Um, Medicine also changes all the time. I mean, let me say this. Let me just say this. My sister had a baby, 5 years ago, and she had a hard time with it. It was not good experience for her at all. She can't have any more babies after this experience. Um, and the doctor said, 50 years ago, you and the baby would have died. 50 small years ago, you and the baby would have died. This is the type medicine is advancing incredibly fast. I don't. It's the second time in this video I'm coming back to it, but are we gonna have a vaccine for the coronavirus like less than a year after it comes out? I mean, is this even a thing? Um, I hope, please. Okay. But yeah, so medicine. Um, they used to believe in medicine of the old days also. They had this thing called humors, or different humors in the body. And that's the balance of the humors. They used to bloodlet. They would oh, you're sick? Let's bloodlet. Let's cut them and let a bunch of blood leave, and that'll help. Yeah, or maybe put some leeches on them. Leeches help and suck the blood right out. I mean, none of this stuff is true. Okay, but they believed, these kind of old ideas in medicine, these hundreds, 1,000-year-old ideas in medicine, until the 1500s. And it kind of starts with a guy named Andreas Vesalius, who dissects the first human body. Now, understand that at that point, dissecting a human body was considered to be taboo, especially by the church, because they said if you dissect a human body, then that person, he's not or she's not gonna go on to the afterlife, okay, or whatever. So Andreas Vesalius he's a grave digger. He goes out there and digs up a bunch of graves, and he cuts up their body and he studies it. I think also we think maybe Da Vinci was also a grave digger. We'll find out maybe Harvey was. Were they digging the graves of criminals so that they're not going to heaven anyways? I mean, who knows? But anyways, they dissect the human body, which is taboo. And he draws pictures. Look, this is a picture from Andreas Vesalius. Okay, and I mean it's not modern medicine, but you can see the very basics of the inside of a body with the heart, and here's maybe the intestines, and I don't know what's going on. Is that a kidney, or I don't know? I have no idea. I'm not a science teacher. Also, he draws like the brain and like. Okay, ask your science teacher. But bottom line is that now we're beginning the era of modern medicine. Okay, William Harvey follows suit. He dissects a human body, and he says there was an old belief that the heart and the liver were the centers of the body. He says no, it's not the liver, it's the heart. That's the center of the circulatory system. So that's kind of what we credit Harvey with, and then the guy named is it Blake Pascal, experiments with how liquids behave under pressure. Okay, he comes up with Pascal's law. He works with pressure. Robert Boyle works with gases, and we're just seeing the beginning of experimentation. Okay, of better understanding our Earth. So again, taking this back to the Renaissance, if humans can achieve anything, why can't we understand this Earth a little better? Why can't we understand our bodies a little better? Why can't we understand the universe a little better? So this is kind of how we connect this, or some people would call this as part of the Renaissance, this moment of great change in Europe. We have a guy named Antoine Lavoisier. He's a Frenchman, I think, who starts to classify the elements. Okay, this is going to later become the periodic table. There's also going to be a method that is produced on how to study science. Okay, this is the scientific method by Sir Francis Bacon is going to come out in the same basic period. Hypothesis, right? And you do tests, and if it's proven right, then you have to do it again over and over and over again and produce the same results in different areas and different locations and different. So we're seeing a great change um, in science, and we it's easy to dismiss the people who are left out of history books, right? Women, oftentimes, but women also were making great achievements in science, and you very rarely hear it. We're living in this era where we're starting to emphasize, trying to make a point to explain that this wasn't just a man only thing, even though the men, they wouldn't let the woman teach or study or experiment or learn, right? You had to like have a husband or a dad. We're going to take a look and say Margaret Cavendish came from a rich English family. When she went to school, she was taught dance and needlework, basic reading and music. But her brothers had tutors, so she would like listen to the teaching. Um, the tutors were giving the brothers about things like science, and she was fascinated by it. So she went on to write many books about science, and she is considered to be one of the early great scientific thinkers of this period. Although she was never given credit, I think at some point she tried to apply for a job, and they would never give it to her. Although she was probably more qualified than most of the men who applied for those jobs. We also know there's a woman named Maria Winkelmann. She was married to an astronomer, so then she kind of became his assistant after he died. She tried to continue on. I think maybe she like discovered a comet in her observations, but they rejected her when she tried to get a job. There was a woman, gosh, I can't think of her name, who wrote a book about insects. That was the first book of its kind in Europe that to be released, and it really did educate and further the knowledge when it comes to insects, because a lot of science, it builds on top of each other, right? Like you can't get here unless you take the next step, and there were women who provided steps up the stairs of scientific knowledge, and we're nowhere close to reaching the top of that staircase. At least maybe we are. I don't know. I'm not a science guy, but yeah. So within the next 100 years, we're going to find that there were great advances in science that helped lead us to where we are today, where we really do have so many things that are created by science. We don't even realize, we don't like stop and think that, I mean, everything from this computer I'm talking into to the the TV I'm watching, to the phone, to the car I'm going to drive, all of it is a result of science. So and it begins in this time period.